All right, it is 2 o'clock. I think we are going to get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar. I'm Cathy Cooney from the Montana Community Foundation, and we appreciate you joining us. And hopefully everyone will call in so they can hear this presentation. Just a few housekeeping tips. It's very easy to hear background noise on these webinars, so please press *6 to mute your line, and then remember to press *7 to unmute when you want to ask a question. We do encourage you to ask questions and make comments during the webinar. We do want this to be a conversation of sorts, and so you don't have to wait till the end. But we also have a chat box. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question out loud, you can always type in your question in the chat box and we'll see it and we'll work the answer into our presentation. And just a reminder, we are recording this webinar, and we will put the link on our homepage on our website at www.mtcf.org, and so anybody can listen to it at any time afterwards. Again, I'm Cathy Cooney. I'm the Director of Donor Services. I've been with the Foundation for 11 years now, and many of you have worked with me before. I have changed my role, so now I'm the person, the go-to person when you have a fund with the Montana Community Foundation and you need any assistance navigating our departments, or if you have any problems with your fund, you need to talk over with someone, I am a good person to call. And next I'm going to hand the phone over to Nick Dietzen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this conversation we're going to have about the IRA Charitable Rollover Provision. I am Nick Dietzen, and I am a colleague of Cathy with the Montana Office of Gift Planning. I'm the Plan Giving Officer for Montana Community Foundation, and I travel the state and talk to individuals, nonprofits, and local community foundations about plan giving and finding solutions so that we can equip our state with the resources for sustainability and stability going forward. So appreciate all of your interest in this topic, and we hope that this will be valuable for you in the coming year.
All right, moving on. All right, obviously you all know this is about the charitable rollover provision. And first, we're going to start out with a little quiz, a little survey. So we'd like everyone to check one of those boxes, and we're going to give you like 30 seconds to check the box, and then we'll skip to the results. So just check one box, any box. Give you a few more seconds. Okay, time's up. Let's see. All right. Okay. We have a lot of nonprofit fundraisers on the calls today, some board members. That's excellent. We got a nice, diverse group of people. Wonderful. Okay. The burning question for today, why are we talking about the IRA Charitable Rollover now? This has actually been around for a number of years, but there's one big difference now. It is permanent. Hallelujah. This is something that the nonprofit sector has wanted from Congress for years. And obviously it took 9 years to get that done, but it's done now. So as of December, it is permanent. And the reason that's important is because it was crazy the way the charitable rollover was offered to us before, because literally many times Congress would wait until December to renew the charitable rollover because it kept expiring. And when it gets renewed in December, and then you only have a couple weeks to let your donors know that this exists, and people have already taken their distribution for the year, it's impossible to really offer this as a viable gifting opportunity. So the fact that it's permanent really means that for the first time since 2006, we can really start educating our donors about this option. So this is why, even though it's been around for a while, you may not know much about the rollover yet. So we're hoping to change that today. By the way, we still have some background noise. If you could hit *6 to mute your lines, that would be really helpful. Thank you. And then hit *7 if you want to open up the line and ask us a question. All right, this next slide, if you can understand what this means, more power to you. I'm going to explain what this paragraph means. I'm not going to read it, so you have a couple seconds now to read this. And then we're going to break this down to make it a little bit more understandable. By the way, just out of curiosity, I would like to know before we get into the ins and outs, how many of you had heard about charitable rollover gifts before you received the invitation to this webinar? How many felt like you're pretty familiar? If you feel like you had a good handle on it, mark yes. If you're pretty clueless about IRA rollover gifts, mark no. We just are curious about how many of you have heard about that. So I'll give you a couple seconds to answer that question. Okay, skip to the results. Very good. Okay, it's almost half and half. Wonderful. And hopefully those of you who are already familiar with this giving option will learn something out of today's webinar. All right, which donors are eligible? We are talking about a small sliver of your donor base, but a very important sliver of your donor base. This gifting option is just for people who are 70 and a half or older. Now obviously even if you have some younger donors, they may eventually get to 70 and a half, so it's still worthwhile putting out the information because sometimes it takes people a while to take advantage of a gifting opportunity like planned giving or whatever. So it's nice to start talking to people that are a little bit younger about this gifting opportunity, but definitely older donors who you think maybe 70 and a half or older, this is a great opportunity for them. You want to get the word out. The reason that this gifting option is only available to those who are 70 and a half or older is very simple. It's because the IRS, Congress, requires that anyone who is 70 and a half or older must take a distribution from their IRA every year. They must take it. And a lot of people are in the enviable position of having money in their IRA that they don't need for retirement. They have plenty of other income. They simply do not need that money, and because they have to take the money, they also have to pay taxes on that income. And there are a lot of people who would really rather not pay taxes. Now, I've worked in the nonprofit sector all my life. I don't think I'll ever be in the position where I have IRA money that I don't need to live on, but there are some people who do. So we're really grateful for that fact because we have seen some really generous gifts through this gifting option, and we're hoping that will continue. Anyway, let's move on. So these are older donors. They have to take a distribution. This IRA charitable rollover provision is the only way that donors can avoid having to take a distribution, having to pay income tax. There are some limitations, but they're not bad. Donors can transfer up to $100,000 each year. So that means, obviously most people, their regular distribution is not $100,000. Their distribution is going to be a lot smaller than that. But this is a way for donors to not only not take the distribution that they're required to take during that tax year, but they can also empty out some of their IRAs if they have excess assets and they're afraid of having to pay estate taxes or their heirs having to pay estate taxes because they have too many assets in their estate. This is a way that they can start transferring some of the money out of their estate, and again, up to $100,000. That is a very, very generous provision. And in fact, we know of at least one nonprofit in Montana that has received a $100,000 gift a few years ago from an IRA rollover. So it is possible, and we do have donors that are giving some larger gifts, not just their annual distribution. Married couples, again, they could each give $100,000. So this is really, really a generous charitable provision. Okay, a couple other little things that we need to talk about because, of course, there are always little things that we need to know. When you talk to a donor about these type of gifts, you need to warn them that the check must go directly from their plan administrator to the charity. I cannot emphasize this enough. If the check is sent to the donor and they have it in their possession at any point, they cannot then turn around and send it to the charity and get the IRA rollover provision. It won't be effective. It has to go directly from the plan administrator. Also, there are little quirks in the legislation where this can't actually benefit a donor advised fund. or a private foundation. Supporting orgs, not as big a deal. Most people don't give to supporting organizations, but we do have a lot of donors that like to give gifts to their donor advised funds or their private foundations. And so if you're on the call and you're a volunteer with a local community foundation, just keep that in mind. Now we do have a question, what is considered a qualified charity? Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to look that up. I would think that anything classified as a 501c3, I'm sure that that's what they mean, because obviously to give a regular gift, to get a charitable deduction, you have to be a 501c3. So I imagine exactly the same provisions or same regulations and restrictions would be in effect for this type of a charitable gift. So again, you need to be a 501c3. All right, moving on. What else do we need to think about? In Montana, we have a really unique situation. We are one of only 4 states in the entire nation that have a charitable incentive for giving on the state level in terms of saving taxes. We have the Montana Endowment Tax Credit, and that's a whole other webinar. If you're not very familiar with the Montana Endowment Tax Credit, you should be, because again, we're one of only 4 states to have this kind of charitable gift provision, and it is a really, really wonderful way to get new gifts. But what this means, it's a little bit more complicated. If you have a donor who has a high income and maybe would benefit from doing the tax credit because they are a taxpayer in Montana, it may be more beneficial for them to take the distribution and do a planned gift. And I am going to turn this over right now to Nick, our planned giving officer, to talk about the tax credit.
Thank you, Cathy. First off, just wanted to give a little bit more background on the fact that this charitable rollover provision is a tool in the planned giving arsenal for all nonprofits. It's a tool for donors who are looking to set aside some funds to make beneficial contributions to their favorite charities. And this is a unique one that has not been marketed in a way that has there's a reason for that, and Cathy went into some of the background about how this had been year over year towards the end of the calendar year, a decision being made by Congress of whether it would be adopted or not. So it's not something that's been marketed often by nonprofits because, frankly, there wasn't the time to know whether this would be in effect. So now that this is permanent, it's a unique time to really look at that as a nonprofit, and then as an individual, if you have taken a distribution before, now knowing that this opportunity is permanent for you, I wanted to just make that a clarified point that not a lot of folks are familiar with this because of the fact that it had just been so transient as to whether it would be coming about or each year being in effect. But the Montana Endowment Tax Credit is something that is up through 2019. We're currently having the most beneficial for individuals at 40% credit on planned gifts made to endowments. This is a different type of planned gift in so much that the tax credit is not what an individual is looking for immediately, potentially with a rollover. If they have, it could be vaulted into a new tax bracket depending on the distribution, if it's that first year, that 70 and a half year of their birth, so that they would take that income, the gains that they receive on this taxable income, because there are Roth IRAs, there are traditional IRAs, and it's the traditional IRAs that are not taxed, and that goes into your retirement income. So in this situation, those distributions are taxed. So for the donor, for the individual, taking those income payments or potentially a beneficiary of these going forward could be troublesome. Now, if you are a resident of Montana, you're paying income tax, and in the state of Montana, you are the options exist, and there are many, and I'm here to help you along with the great team at the Montana Community Foundation, and specifically in the Office of Gift Planning, in talking about the many options that exist. We're going to delve a little into one spot here that will be helpful, but I'm happy my contact information is provided later in this slide, and I would love to have more in-depth conversations with donors and nonprofits. I've met a great many of you already, but not to get off track here, if an individual, a donor, wants to have a tax credit, not a deduction, on a charitable gift, taking the distribution instead of rolling it over and then taking those funds and putting those into a planned gift can be incredibly tax beneficial for the individuals. As I mentioned, for individuals, 40% of the charitable amount, and we have this slide that you're probably checking out that was prepared for Meriwether Lewis. This option takes into considerations some assumptions, as you see the birth date, and this is a deferred gift annuity. So that's something that we have a lot of examples on our website, and I'm happy to provide individual donors and nonprofits who have donors that want to talk more about this. We'll go to the next slide here, and it shows the benefits of this form of a planned gift. So using the assumptions on the previous slide, you see that the charitable deduction, now that's the federal amount on this $10,000 example that we're using, is in this $88.93 amount. 40% of that figure comes to our $3,557 Montana endowment tax credit. So if you're carrying tax liability as an individual, let's say of $4,000, this is a great opportunity for you to help your charity, make a planned gift, and then eliminate a lot of your tax, your state tax, as well as the federal with that charitable deduction up top. Also in this particular vehicle, you see that there's an annuity payment. In this example, it was deferred out to life expectancy, which gives you the best tax benefit. So the reason we're talking about this illustration is that there is a tax benefit in so much that with a charitable rollover, if you roll that over to the charity directly, you will not have income tax on that gift. So this next slide that you're looking at right now just shows an illustration, a visual of the donor making the gift using this deferred gift annuity vehicle. And then in this, the remainder going to a qualified endowment. So we talked about a qualified charity earlier, but a qualified endowment. All endowments with Montana Community Foundation and all of our fund partners are qualified endowments. So that's a planned gift that this illustration would be most beneficial to someone carrying tax liability. So we're going to move on to the next slide here. I'm going to give it back to Cathy. I want to really let everyone know that while it sounds like there's a lot to consider there, really what you want to do when you're talking about this with potential donors is let's take a look at all the opportunities that exist, and we can help you at the Montana Community Foundation in illustrating the opportunities that exist for individuals to benefit their charities. So please contact us with more information, and we can arm you for, you can consult your tax professionals and financial advisors to see what would be the best fit for you.
Okay, and just a quick review then. So if you're looking at these various options for your donors, keep in mind if we're looking at planned gift versus for the tax credit versus an IRA rollover gift, if you have donors who don't pay tax in the state of Montana, maybe this is not their primary residence. We have an awful lot of us in that situation where we have out-of-state donors. Definitely the IRA rollover is going to be more helpful. If they want to make a fairly small gift, the IRA rollover is going to be more helpful. You need to make a bigger gift in order to do a planned gift. And certainly it's very important to remember that for the tax credit, it has to be a gift to endowment. And with the IRA rollover, it does not. A lot of those are completely unrestricted gifts. So it's wonderful for donors who want to help you with your operating support, maybe help you with a capital campaign, or starting a new program, you definitely want to let them know that an IRA rollover gift is a better option if they're not specifically interested in endowment. And just a reminder, sometimes donors don't always remember that with these gifts, it's very important that they not receive any benefit. The IRA is very adamant that with the IRA rollover gift, just like other gifts, no benefits can inure to the donors. You don't give them memberships. You don't give them special tickets to your dinners. No benefits at all. Anyway. By the way, Melissa Boyer, she was asking about governmental organizations. I will have to check on that, whether government organizations can actually accept an IRA rollover gift, and if that is included in the provision. And Melissa, I will get back to you on that. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. Now, non-itemizers. This is actually a really great gift instrument for non-itemizers because it actually does benefit them because they don't receive the income, they don't have to pay tax. So it's one of the few ways that non-itemizers can actually benefit from charitable giving. So keep that in mind if you have some elderly donors that perhaps do have a limited income but do want to help you with your nonprofit, or if you're a donor that is a non-itemizer, this might be a good option. Okay, and just to clarify, I get this question quite often when we're talking about IRA rollover gifts. Can you get a charitable tax deduction? No, you cannot do both. You have to get the distribution and pay taxes on it, and then you can claim the charitable deduction if they give money to charity then, or don't take the distribution, don't pay taxes, but then you don't get the charitable deduction for it. You can't do both. All right. So we're going to stop at this point. This is the first half of the webinar is over. We wanted to give everyone some general information because we have donors and nonprofits on the call. The second part of this webinar will delve a little bit more into information that might be helpful to nonprofits. But before we go to the next part, we just wanted to find out if you have any questions, comments, anything you would like to add at this point. Anybody? You can press *7 if you're muted and want to ask a question. No? Okay. Let's move on then. Again, this is for our nonprofit folks. We'd first like to know if your nonprofit organization has received an IRA charitable rollover gift in the past. We'll give you a few seconds to answer that. No dilly, no dally. Okay. Are we ready? Moving on. Wow, that's wonderful. There are a number of charities that have received a gift. This is actually really hard information to glean. I have had conversations with people around the state. I've heard anecdotally of a few IRA charitable gifts, but this information is not documented anywhere. Montana Nonprofit Association didn't have that information. So this is excellent news that we are already, as a sector in Montana, getting a number of these gifts, and now that it's permanent, that trend should accelerate. So this is excellent news. Out of curiosity, if you have received this kind of gift, how much was the gift? We're not trying to pry, but we know of some really large gifts that have taken place, and we like to be able to tell those stories to motivate people to do the outreach to their donors. Okay, I'm going to skip to the results. Okay, wow. Quite a few of them are in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. That is great. Very good. Okay. Nice to know. So you can see by the chart that these can be, very significant gifts. I think for most of us, anything over $100 or $200 is a pretty significant gift. So it's nice to see that there are a number of those. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Nick. He's going to talk to you about what's in it for your nonprofit to do this outreach to donors.
So we had the discussion a little bit before and about the toolkit of planned giving, or just some options that exist to utilize the many beneficial, both tax advantaged and just generally favorable for donors to carry out some legacy planning with their favorite nonprofits and charities around the state. So it's many conversations around plan giving. There's some reticence about, can a smaller nonprofit execute some of the plan giving needs of their donor base, and do they need to have expertise in many different facets. And I kind of just want to dispel a little of the notion that these are very achievable parts of your fundraising plans, and we are encountering a time in history where more and more donors are entering a period of their life where they have funds and they have charitable interests. So we're talking about the rollover, but incorporate this in your plan giving strategies and know that it's not overly difficult to determine, because this is very set forth that you can figure out who's coming up on that birth date that will be close. So this slide, approximately 50 million Americans have IRAs. A quarter of all retirement assets are in IRAs. But that donor base of folks who are getting near that 70-year mark or something, or maybe they've passed it, this needs to be marketed to them. And the fact that this hasn't been something that we've had in permanency, now is the time. So how do you talk to them about this? So inclusion in newsletter, having individual discussions with your donors, those are the best ways to market it. I think it's important also to note that familiarity with, many of us have retirement accounts. IRA rollovers are often advertised at the level of individual financial institutions and institutional banking entities, because you may go from one workplace to another, and rolling over an IRA to another entity is a rollover. It's the same terminology, but what we're discussing obviously is about the charitable portion of essentially relinquishing those assets to charity via one of these forms, either a direct rollover or taking the distribution and making a planned gift. So definitely talk to your donors, and if you ask them that first question is, are you familiar with an IRA rollover, make sure that it's the charitable rollover, and the idea that's important to note, because everyone likes to, it's not easy with some of these terminologies to look like you don't know what you're talking about. So, but that's just the realities of this specific topic, because it's not something that's been utilized by a lot, although we were encouraged that the familiarity on this call was at about 60%. So again, now is the time to start talking. Plan giving oftentimes gets pushed to the back end, but folks are turning 70 and getting into this zone every day. So be sure to have this included in your communications and kind of drill down into your donor database and look at who are those folks that have done have made consistent gifts to you over time. Those are the candidates who are going to be most interested in leaving a legacy and being able to provide some funds to help your organization do great work going ahead. And people take these distributions all year long, so don't wait, and that's clearly in capitals here. So now is a good time to start making your marketing plans, but having individual conversations. Does this rollover gift have to go to an endowment? No. Cathy mentioned earlier, for those who are out of state, folks that don't have tax liability in Montana, they are definitely the best candidates to go just a direct rollover to your organization and those much needed operating funds available immediately. On the other end of the standpoint, when we talked about planned gifts and the Montana Endowment Tax Credit, what's important to note as well is that while these planned gifts are initiated, there is great benefit to the sense that when someone takes a distribution every year, if they go through this process, there's a lot of benefits to them, and these gifts can become recurring in many instances. So I'm sure for those of you who have mentioned in some of the polls that we have that they've received a rollover, they probably are receiving rollovers going forwards as well, because we see that. So every year you have that ability to be the beneficiary of your donors' thoughtfulness and generosity. So how can MCF help tell our donors about this? There's a link here, and you can, Cathy mentioned earlier, the link for this entire webinar will be available online not too long after this phone call. But feel free to use any and all of our information and incorporate the facts that we've shared with you, past newsletters we have with Infinity. If you're not currently receiving those, feel free to send an email to one of us and we will get you on the distribution list for that. But we're very happy and eager to help you with any of the questions about how to market. Riley Meredith, based in Helena, is our marketing and communications director. He does a wonderful job working with many of our partners, and we are very excited to have these conversations about you and make sure that while this is a newer opportunity, you go about it the right way. So never hesitate to think, did I phrase this correctly? Do I have a good example that I can use? We will be there for you to make sure that this is a great opportunity going forward, that it is, and that it's utilized in the best fashion you can. Now, your organization will need a different process to acknowledge these gifts. So I'm going to hand this over to Cathy real quick to just talk a little bit. She's our donor services person and has great expertise in this area.
Yeah, just to reiterate, talking to your donors about this gift, you can do this without any planned giving expertise on your staff, which is one of the reasons we'd really like to make sure all nonprofits know about this, because these are easy gifts to get and they're easy gifts to process. The only difference is you really don't want to send the same acknowledgement letter that you normally send to your donor. So let's say you have a donor that is just arranged $10,000 IRA rollover gift. You will get that check from the company like Vanguard or whoever manages that IRA, and you would send back a letter to the administrator saying, yes, we received this gift, thank you very much. But then you also want to turn around and thank the donor, but you don't want to thank them in a way that leads them to believe that they have received a regular gift acknowledgement letter that they can claim on their as a charitable deduction on their income tax. So you want to definitely thank them, but make it very clear that this gift is not eligible for tax deduction, charitable tax deduction, but we really appreciate you supporting our organization, et cetera, et cetera. So just modify the language on your regular acknowledgement letter a little bit. That's really the only work involved with these gifts. So just wanted to remind everyone of that. And to follow up, we'd love to hear more about your success stories. For those of you who have already received IRA rollover gifts, if you ever want to share those stories with us so we can share them with nonprofits around the state, it would be great. But just a couple success stories that we know about. Valley County Community Foundation, one of our affiliated community foundations, we worked for years up in Glasgow, and they received a very large IRA rollover gift very early. I think it was probably 2006, 2007 when this was a very new gifting opportunity, and it was over $70,000. It was to set up a scholarship fund, and we were just so gratified to see a small rural community in Montana get this kind of gift from one donor. So it was fabulous. And then Montana Community Foundation has actually received a few small IRA rollover gifts, but we're expecting that again to increase now that we're getting the word out about it. And then one of our other colleagues, our community foundation up in Whitefish, did receive a $100,000 gift, which was not surprising given it was Whitefish, but still gratifying to know that there are donors that are willing to provide such a large gift. And that just goes to show you that not all of these rollover gifts are necessarily going to be just the annual distribution. Some donors are taking the opportunity to get rid of excess assets that they don't think they're going to need for retirement to make sure that they come under the estate tax cap, and that provides an opportunity for you. So that is the end of our webinar. Here is our contact information. We would be very pleased to hear from you if you need any help. Any questions about any of the information we've provided today? No questions. Okay, well, our link to the webinar will be on the MTCF website, and feel free to listen later or to send to some of your board members. But good luck with soliciting these gifts. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us. Thank you so much for participating today, and everybody have a great afternoon.